The rain fell in sheets, a cold, relentless curtain that turned the streets of Hartford, Connecticut, into rivers of shadow. I stood on the porch of my childhood home, my heart a storm of its own, clutching a duffel bag stuffed with the fragments of my life. At 19, I was pregnant, disowned, and utterly alone, cast out by the very people who should have loved me most. My father's final words echoed in my mind, sharper than the wind that bit at my skin. If you walk out that door with this shameful secret, you're no longer my daughter. I was Abigail Harper, and this was the night my world broke apart. But it was not the end of my story, only the beginning of a tale forged in pain, tempered by resilience, and crowned with a justice I could not yet imagine. 15 years later, they would come to my door, my family, their faces pale with regret, unaware of the empire I had built from their rejection. And when they saw what their cruelty had wrought, their worlds would shatter as mine once had. But let me start at the beginning, where all tales of betrayal must begin, in the illusion of normalcy. Hartford was a city of quiet pride, its suburbs, lined with colonial homes and white picket fences, where the air smelled of fresh-cut grass in summer and chimney smoke in winter. Our house on Maple Street was the envy of the neighborhood, a 4-bedroom colonial with ivy creeping up its brick facade, its windows glowing warmly against the dusk. My father, William Harper, was a man of stature, an elder at First Covenant Church and the founder of Harper Construction, a company that built half the homes in our corner of the state. His voice carried weight in council meetings, his handshake sealed deals, and his smile, rare but radiant, could charm a congregation. My mother, Eleanor, was his perfect counterpart, a woman of grace and precision. Her garden bloomed with roses that won ribbons at the county fair, and her kitchen produced meals that drew neighbors to our table. She was the heartbeat of our home, her laughter a melody that softened my father's stern edges. Then there was my brother, Daniel, 2 years my senior, the golden son who could do no wrong, quarterback of the Hartford Hawks, valedictorian, and voted most likely to succeed. He was the sun around which our family orbited. At his games, my father's cheers would thunder through the stands, "That's my boy," while I sat beside him, invisible, yearning for a sliver of that pride. We were the Harpers, the family others envied. Sunday mornings meant church, followed by brunch at the Maple Street Cafe, where my mother's blueberry scones were legendary. Evenings were for board games in the living room, laughter echoing off the oak-paneled walls. From the outside, our life was a portrait of perfection. But beneath the surface, there were cracks, hairline fractures that would one day split wide open. I was 17 when I met Nathan Caldwell in our junior year English class. We were paired for a project on Romeo and Juliet, a cruel irony given what would come. Nathan was different from the boys who strutted through Hartford High, their egos inflated by football jerseys and prom crowns. He was quiet, with eyes like polished walnut that saw through the shallow games of adolescence. When we met at the library to work, we spent 3 hours talking about everything but Shakespeare, music, dreams, the stars. "You're not like them, Abigail," he said, his voice soft but sure. "You see the world for what it is." Nathan volunteered at the animal shelter, wrote poetry that made my heart ache, and played the cello with a passion that vibrated through my bones. We fell in love slowly, deliberately, as if we knew the world would not be kind to us. He dreamed of studying music at Juilliard, already accepted with a partial scholarship. I planned to attend NYU for nursing, close enough to visit him on weekends. We spoke of a future together, apartments in the city, summers in Europe, a life built on love and ambition. My parents approved of Nathan, or so they thought. He was polite, driven, from a respectable family. "The only boy I'd trust with my daughter," my father would say, half joking, half warning. "But the gods are cruel, and fate cares little for plans. It began with fatigue, a weariness Nathan dismissed as senior year stress. Then came the bruises, blooming unbidden on his skin, purple and angry. By graduation, he could barely climb the stairs to the auditorium. The diagnosis came like a blade: acute myeloid leukemia, aggressive and advanced. I sat in a sterile hospital room, holding his hand as the doctor spoke of chemotherapy, survival rates, and side effects. Nathan listened calmly, asking questions with a clarity that belied his 18 years, while I fought to keep my tears from spilling. Later, alone, he broke. "I'm not afraid of dying, Abby," he whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. "I'm afraid of leaving nothing behind, of being forgotten." The treatments were brutal. Chemotherapy stripped his dark curls, left his frame gaunt, his skin sallow. Some days, the pain was so fierce he could only whisper my name. Yet his spirit held, a flame that refused to gutter. On a rare clear day, between cycles of poison, he took my hand and spoke of legacy. "I want to leave something of myself in this world," he said, his eyes burning with purpose. "If I don't make it, I want a part of me to stay with you." We talked for hours, weighing the gravity of his wish, a child, a piece of him to carry forward. It was not a decision born of lust or recklessness, but of love facing the abyss. We were young, yes, but we understood mortality in a way our peers could not. When I learned I was pregnant 2 months later, my heart was a battlefield. Joy, that Nathan's light would endure, terror at facing my parents' judgment, sorrow that he might never hold our child. But beneath it all was a certainty. This was our act of defiance against death. I planned to tell my parents carefully, with Nathan beside me, once he was stronger. But fate, ever cruel, had other plans. Nathan collapsed at home, his body succumbing to the cancer's relentless advance. By the time I reached the hospital, he was unconscious, machines breathing for him. I stood by his bed, my world narrowing to the beep of monitors and the faint warmth of his hand in mine. My plans to tell my parents dissolved. I could not leave his side, but secrets have a way of escaping. My mother, Eleanor, found the pregnancy test hidden in my bathroom drawer, wrapped in tissue like a guilty confession. That evening, I returned from the hospital to find my parents at the dining room table, the test between them like evidence at a trial. The chandelier cast harsh shadows, turning their faces into masks of judgment. "Sit down, Abigail," my father said, his voice a low, dangerous calm. I knew that tone, anger too deep for shouting. I sat, my hands trembling beneath the table. Before I could speak, he erupted. "What have you done?" His fist slammed the table, rattling the china. "After all we've taught you, all the values we've instilled, you throw it away for some teenage rebellion?" "Dad, please," I tried, my voice shaking. "It's not what you think." Nathan, my mother cut in, her voice thin as a blade. "We welcomed him into our home, trusted him with our daughter. You've brought shame to this family," my father continued, his face crimson. "To our church. What will people say? The elder's daughter pregnant out of wedlock." I tried again. "If you'd just listen, no, you listen," he snapped. "You have 2 choices. Fix this problem or leave this house. I will not harbor sin under my roof." The words struck like blows. Fix this problem. As if my child, Nathan's child, was a mistake to be erased. "I can't do that," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I won't. Nathan is dying. This baby might be all that's left of him." For a moment, something flickered in my father's eyes. Confusion, perhaps, or the ghost of understanding. But before I could press, my brother Daniel entered, his timing a cruel twist of fate. "What's going on?" he asked, his gaze darting between us. Your sister is pregnant, my father said flatly, and thinks keeping it is the right choice. Daniel's eyes widened, then narrowed. Seriously, Abigail, how could you be so selfish? Do you know what this will do to Mom and Dad's reputation? To the business? His betrayal cut deeper than my father's rage. I had never been close to Daniel, but I had believed he would stand by me when it mattered. Instead, he chose reputation over family, siding with our parents without a moment's hesitation. My mother's silence was the worst of all. She sat, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, offering no defense, no comfort. The woman who had once kissed my bruises and soothed my fears could not meet my gaze. Nathan has leukemia, I said into the hostile silence. He's dying. This baby is his legacy, his last wish. If you'd come to the hospital, talk to his doctors, you'd understand. Enough excuses, my father interrupted. Your choices are clear. Fix this or leave. I fled to my room, tears blurring my vision, and called Nathan's parents, Ellen and Thomas Caldwell. They had been my anchor through his illness, welcoming me as family. When I told them what had happened, they offered their guest room without hesitation. You're not alone, Abigail, Ellen said, her voice warm despite her own grief. You'll stay with us. The next morning I visited Nathan. He was awake but frail, his skin yellowed, his eyes sunken. My parents found out, I told him, holding his hand. They're making me choose between the baby and home. His eyes closed, a tear escaping. This is my fault, he whispered. No, I said fiercely, wiping his tear away. This was our choice, made from love. Tell them to come here, he said, wincing as he tried to sit up. Let me explain. They won't listen, I said, shaking my head. Dad's made up his mind. He squeezed my hand, his strength fading. Promise me you'll keep our baby safe. Tell them about me someday. I promise, I whispered, kissing his forehead. When I returned home to pack, my father was waiting in the living room, his posture rigid. So, you've made your choice, he said. Not a question, but an accusation. You're the one making choices, Dad, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. You're choosing your reputation over your daughter and grandchild. Don't. Turn this on me, he snapped. You created this situation. As I moved toward the stairs, Daniel blocked my path. I went through your phone, he said, his tone self-righteous. There's nothing about Nathan being sick. No texts, no proof. My stomach dropped. That's because we talk in person or his parents call me. How dare you invade my privacy? We were looking for the truth, my father said, defending. Him? You're obviously hiding something. The truth? I laughed bitterly. The truth is you'd rather believe I'm lying than accept I made a choice you don't approve of. I pushed past Daniel, packed my bag, and descended the stairs. My mother stood at the bottom, her eyes red-rimmed. Abigail, please, she whispered. Think about what you're doing. For a moment, I hoped she would fight for me. Instead, she said, You're throwing away your future. No, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. I'm protecting it. As I walked out, my father's final words followed me into the dusk. You're no longer my daughter. I looked back once, memorizing his face, knowing it would be years before I saw it again. I stopped being your daughter the moment you stopped being my father, I said, and stepped into the darkness. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and survival. Nathan's parents welcomed me, but their home was a temporary refuge, strained by medical bills and their own heartbreak. I slept in my car for 3 nights, parked behind the hospital, my hand on my still flat stomach, whispering promises to my unborn child. By day, I searched for work, turned away from 7 places before landing a job at Sunshine Diner, where the manager, Patty, hired me after I broke down in her office. Just be on time and don't steal, she said, her gruff kindness a lifeline. The diner paid barely enough for food and gas, so I took a second job stocking shelves at a convenience store from 10 at night to 2 in the morning. Between shifts, I visited Nathan, watching him fade as the cancer claimed him. Some days he didn't recognize me. Others, he spoke of our child with a wistful hope that broke my heart. A co-worker, Sarah, noticed me dozing during breaks and learned I was living in my car. A single mother with a 4-year-old daughter, Zoe, she insisted I move into her 1-bedroom apartment. One mom helping another, she said, refusing my protests. Her pull-out couch became my sanctuary, though we both knew it was temporary. Her landlord would not tolerate an extra tenant. Nathan's condition worsened. The chemotherapy failed, his organs began to shut down. His parents, Ellen and Thomas, remained steadfast, never judging our choice to have a child. "You're carrying our grandchild," Ellen said one night, her voice a balm. "You're family now." The contrast with my own family's rejection was a wound that never stopped bleeding. I checked my phone obsessively, hoping for a message from my parents, but it remained silent. At 5 months pregnant, I received the call I dreaded. "Come now," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "He won't make it through the night." I drove through a storm, arriving to find Nathan barely conscious, his breath shallow. "Abby," he whispered, his hand reaching for my bump. I guided, his fingers to where our child kicked, and a faint smile touched his lips. "Strong," he murmured. "Like you." We sat like that for hours, his hand on my stomach, mine over his. Just after midnight, he spoke with sudden clarity. "Promise me," he said, each word a labor. "Tell our baby about me, about us." "I promise," I sobbed. "Every day." He reached under his pillow, pulling out a velvet box. Inside was a silver ring with a sapphire, his grandmother's. "Wanted to give it to you properly," he said, his voice fading. I slipped it onto my finger, too overwhelmed to speak. "I love you, Abigail Harper," he said, his voice briefly strong. "Always." Those were his last words. By morning, Nathan Caldwell was gone, leaving me to carry our dreams alone. Nathan's funeral was a haze of grief. I stood apart, my pregnancy visible, whispers trailing me like shadows. His parents insisted I stand with them, but I felt the judgment of our former classmates, their stories weaving lies about our love. My parents were absent, their absence louder than any sermon. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the hospital. Nathan had listed me as his fiancée in a clinical trial, entitling me to $3,000 in compensation. It was a small fortune in my desperate state. Then, at 7 months, I went into premature labor. Ellen rushed me to the hospital, where, after 26 hours, Benjamin Nathan Harper was born, 6 weeks early, weighing 5 pounds 3 ounces. He had Nathan's dark hair and my nose, a tiny miracle I vowed to protect. Ellen and Thomas were there, taking photos, bringing food, helping with paperwork. But soon after, they delivered devastating news. Thomas had been offered a job in Arizona they couldn't refuse. "We'll visit," Ellen promised, tears in her eyes as she held Benjamin. "He's our connection to Nathan." With the Caldwells gone, my world shrank to Sarah and Zoe. The $3,000 dwindled quickly, and postpartum depression sank its claws into me. Some days I could barely rise from the couch, Benjamin's cries piercing my soul. In a desperate bid for connection, I sent my parents a birth announcement with a photo of Benjamin, his eyes like Nathan's. I wrote, "Your grandson, Benjamin Nathan Harper, born December 12th. Weeks passed with no reply. Summoning my courage, I drove to my parents' house with Benjamin in my arms. My father answered, older, grayer, his eyes flickering with something I thought was regret. Then his face hardened. "We have nothing to say to you," he said, avoiding Benjamin's gaze. and closed the door. I stood on the porch, tears falling, as my mother's face appeared briefly in the window before the curtain fell. As I walked to my car, Daniel passed me, his eyes meeting mine. I shifted Benjamin so he could see his uncle, but Daniel looked away, walking past as if I were a ghost. That day, I knew I was truly alone. Whatever family I had, I would build myself. 6 months later, my fragile world collapsed again. Sarah's landlord discovered me, threatening eviction. That same week, Benjamin developed a fever that spiked to 103 degrees. As I packed our belongings, my car broke down on the way to the hospital, smoke billowing from the hood. With Benjamin, crying in the back seat, I sobbed against the steering wheel, broken by the weight of it all. A tap on the window startled me. It was Mrs. Elena Martinez, my high school Spanish teacher. "Abigail, are you okay?" she asked, concern etching her face. "My son's sick," I said, my voice raw. "The car broke down. I need to get to the hospital." Without hesitation, she opened her passenger door. "Get in. I'll take you." In the ER, doctors diagnosed Benjamin with a severe ear infection that could have spread to his brain. Elena stayed by my side, listening as I poured out my story. Nathan's death, my family's rejection, my homelessness. "You'll stay." "With me," she said firmly. "I have a basement apartment. It's not much, but it's safe," I protested, but she waved me off. It's not imposing when it's offered freely. Elena's basement was a haven, a daybed, a crib, a small, sitting area. Temporary, she said, but not rushed. Her kindness was the turning point I hadn't dared hope for. With a stable home and Elena watching Benjamin, I could think beyond survival. "You're too smart for dead-end jobs," Elena told me one evening. "What about nursing school?" The dream I'd abandoned seemed impossible, but Elena helped me research online programs and apply for financial aid. I enrolled in community college, worked evenings at an assisted living facility, and watched Benjamin thrive under Elena's care, calling her Grandma Elena. Then, another twist of fate. A letter from a law firm. Nathan had taken out a $25,000 life insurance policy, naming me and Benjamin as beneficiaries. His participation in the clinical trial had also entitled Benjamin to a medical trust fund, accessible at 18 for education. The money was freedom, a chance to breathe. I completed my prerequisites with a 4.00 GPA and entered an accelerated nursing program on a single-parent scholarship. Benjamin grew, his intelligence startling, reading. At 3, playing piano at 4, his fingers finding melodies that echoed Nathan's cello. When he was 5, I graduated with honors and accepted a job at Hartford Children's Hospital in pediatrics, drawn to the children who reminded me of my own journey. The day I bought our first home, a 2-bedroom cottage with a fenced yard, I stood in the empty living room and wept. From homelessness to this, in 5 years. "Is this really ours, Mom?" Benjamin asked, spinning in the sunlight. "Forever and ever," I promised. My career flourished. By 30, I was nursing director of the oncology department, a bittersweet return to the corridors where I'd lost Nathan. Benjamin's talent shone brighter each year. At 10, he played concertos with ease. At 12, he won a national composition contest, performing at Lincoln Center. As I watched him take his bow, the audience on their feet, I felt Nathan's presence, sharing our pride. Financial security followed. We moved to a 4-bedroom home in Hartford's most exclusive neighborhood, 3 miles from my childhood home. A music room housed a baby grand piano I'd saved for years to buy. My support system grew. Elena, colleagues, single mothers who became family. The Caldwells visited often, bringing stories of Nathan that kept his memory alive for Benjamin. Then came the letter that changed everything. The pharmaceutical company behind Nathan's trial had developed a breakthrough drug, and as part of a patent settlement, families of participants received compensation. The amount, $3 million plus royalties, stunned. Me. After consulting advisors, I founded the Nathan Caldwell Memorial Foundation, dedicated to supporting young cancer patients with housing, transportation, and childcare. The Nathan Caldwell House opened near Hartford Hospital, offering free lodging to families on what would have been Nathan's 35th birthday. Benjamin cut the ribbon, playing a composition dedicated to his father. Local news covered the event, sharing our story. I never expected it to reach my family, but 3 days later, an email arrived from Daniel. "I saw you on the news," he wrote. "Mom and Dad saw it too. Dad's had health issues, and seeing you and Benjamin affected him. They want to meet their grandson. Would you consider a visit?" Rage, hesitation, and a flicker of hope warred within me. After days of reflection and therapy, I agreed, setting boundaries to protect Benjamin. Emails with Daniel revealed changes. My father's heart attack had softened him. My mother had kept a secret album of my achievements. "They were wrong," Daniel wrote. "Dad especially. He's proud of you, even if he doesn't say it." The day of their visit, I was a bundle of nerves, rearranging flowers, checking the oven. Benjamin, now 13, watched with amusement. "Mom, the house is perfect," he said. "So are we." He was right. Our life was solid, built on my terms. Whatever happened, we would be okay. At noon, their car pulled into our driveway. Father, leaning on a cane, looked frail. My mother's hair was gray but unchanged. Daniel stood between them, their anchor. I opened the door before they could knock, controlling the moment. "Abigail," my mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "You look beautiful." "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered our grand foyer, eyes wide at the chandelier, the awards, the photos. A portrait of Nathan stopped my father cold. "Is that?" he began. "Nathan Caldwell," I said. "Benjamin's father." Benjamin stepped forward, his resemblance to Nathan unmistakable. My mother gasped. My father gripped his cane. Daniel stared. "Hello," Benjamin said, extending his hand. "I'm Benjamin Harper. Nice to meet you." My father took his hand, trembling. "I'm William, your grandfather." "I'm Eleanor, your grandmother," my mother said, asking to hug him. Benjamin looked to me, and I nodded. He allowed the embrace, awkward but kind. In the living room, tension hung heavy until Benjamin offered to play the piano. His haunting melody set the stage as I told them everything: Nathan's diagnosis, our choice, his death, my struggles. My father's face crumpled. My mother sobbed. Daniel admitted his role in their disbelief. "Why now?" I asked. "The heart attack," my father said. "It made me see what I'd lost." Then the news. Your foundation? Benjamin's music? I realized what my pride cost us. "We're not asking for forgiveness," my mother said. "We just want a chance to know him." Benjamin showed them photo albums, narrating our life. I stepped into the kitchen, touching the sapphire ring around my neck. "We're okay," I whispered to Nathan. We made it. But the true twist came months later. At a foundation gala, a man approached me, a lawyer representing a rival pharmaceutical company. "Your fiancé's trial data was stolen," he said. "Your family's company, Harper Construction, was involved in a deal to sell proprietary research." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. My father's business had profited from Nathan's suffering, indirectly funding the settlement. That changed my life. When I confronted him, he admitted to signing contracts without knowing their full implications, desperate to save his company during a financial crisis. "I didn't know it was connected to Nathan," he said, broken. The knowledge was a wound, but also a weapon. I chose not to expose him publicly, sparing Benjamin the scandal. Instead, I demanded Harper Construction fund a new wing of the Nathan Caldwell House. My father agreed, his atonement a quiet act of justice. Years passed, our family relationships mending slowly. My parents became grandparents, Daniel and Uncle, their presence consistent, but never erasing the past. The foundation grew, saving lives, while Benjamin's music soared, his compositions a bridge between his father's memory and his own future. On the 15th anniversary of Nathan's death, we held a memorial concert. My father, now in a wheelchair, spoke to me privately. "I was wrong," he said. "Real love persists through mistakes. I'm proud to be your father, though I didn't earn it." His words healed a wound I hadn't known still bled. Forgiveness was a process, not a moment, but I felt its beginning. Our story is not neat, but it is ours. From rejection, I built resilience. From abandonment, independence. From pain, purpose. Benjamin is my greatest gift, proof that love endures beyond death. And I learned that family is not just blood, but those who stay when the world crumbles. What would your life look like if you defined yourself not by who left you, but by your courage to rise? Share your story, for in sharing, we find strength.